Welcome back. And let's go ahead and get one thing straight right out of the gate. The most terrifying thing about Apple TV's Cape Fear isn't Javier Bardem's uncanny ability to turn prison yard kettlebells into weapons of mass destructions. No, the real terrifying thing is the fact that the good guys in this story are actually probably the villains. And it honestly kind of has me rooting for the psychopath to dismantle their affluent, hypocritical lives. Today, we're going to break down the first 3 episodes of this twisted reimagining of Cape Fear. We're going to talk about the psychology, the hidden clues. We're going to make some wild predictions more than likely. And we're going to kind of expose the moral bankruptcy of the Bowden family. Now, if you thought the monsters from our TV show From were terrifying, then wait till you meet this married pair of lawyers with a secret. So let's buckle up for that. But before we get into anything else, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Keep coming back for more content, and let's go ahead and dive right into this. So I'm not going to give this complete recap of all 3 episodes. I think I'm going to compress the chaos because the first 3 episodes, in my opinion, did not give a damn about our blood pressure. So we open on this picture perfect 4th of July with Anna and Tom Bowden celebrating their nouveau rich lives in Savannah, Georgia. But paradise gets interrupted pretty quickly and violently when Max Cady's heavily manipulated mistress writes this suicide note and then takes not 1 but 2 shots to her head because she couldn't get it done with the first one. And she basically takes the blame for the brutal murder of Max's wife 17 years prior, and boom, he's free to go and he's done, he's exonerated and he's out of jail and he's free to do whatever he wants to do. And then the funny thing about it, when you know it, he comes back into Anna's life pretty quickly, and he's the golden boy for her own social justice project. You know, we see him crash their gala. He gives this chilling speech about how a life sentence is a death by 1,000 cuts. And then after that, he basically starts to execute this quiet home invasion. Now, all of this happens pretty quickly because we see after the gala, there are 4 dead skunks in the pool. Max somehow befriends the family cat, and he somehow, if it's him, manages to drug their miserable, ostracized son, Zach, because he just has a lot going on. But on top of having a lot going on, now he's missing a toe because, I don't know, I guess losing a toe is better than losing all of his friends over this leaked news scandal that he was apparently behind that kind of comes back to haunt his sister later in episode 3. But I guess that's not punishment enough, you know. Maybe losing a toe is enough. But speaking of episode 3, let's go ahead and jump into it because by the time we get to episode 3, Anna is somehow tasked with representing Max in this lawsuit against the private prison. And the lawsuit that he has there is because, you know, if you remember the scene where he got his ass whooped by the neo-Nazis. But all of that aside, she managed to secure him I couldn't remember if it was a $1.2 or a $4.2 million settlement. But either way, she got him a lot of money. I think it's 4.2 million, but please correct me if I'm wrong, if it's 1.2, but I know it's one of the two. But we're going to go with 4.2 million. And on top of that, you know, her firm gets 40% of that. So it's damn near half. So he's only going to walk out of here with maybe like 1.5 after taxes and everything. So I guess he gets a little bit of money, but 17 years for 1.5 million. I don't think the math adds up, and I don't think he thought the math added up either. But needless to say, they get caught in this hurricane or whatnot, and Tom is back in their home in Savannah, and he's popping these hallucinogenic tinctures and not sure what's in it, but something makes him hallucinate a lot because he's not even thinking about his daughter having this wild party in the backyard with all these crazy kids and drugs and alcohol, and they're just having a blast, and he's in the house. And his son is in the house as well, you know, kind of spying on him, doing some pretty naughty things with his secretary or somebody that works at a law firm. I can't remember who she is. Her name is Lexi. But the cherry on top of everything is Juliette Lewis actually comes back in this show. And that was a little surprise that I didn't see coming because she actually played Danielle Bowden in the movie, who was the teenager who was getting terrorized by Max. But she actually got an Oscar nomination, or maybe she won. I can't remember which one it was. But something with the Oscars, she got nominated, or best case she won for that role. But she leaves this weird VHS tape and it has this weird song on it, and it sends Max into this traumatic PTSD moment, and I think it's all related to his childhood because we know that he is suffering from a violent, abusive childhood. And that's basically where the 3rd episode ends. So now let's go ahead and talk about these sociopaths a little bit more. And I want to start with the Bowdens because Anna and Tom, they're an interesting couple. So 17 years ago in Showtime, Anna was this defense attorney who was defending Max, and she eventually railroaded him into accepting a plea deal that basically got him a life sentence, I believe. And Tom was the prosecutor on a case, and he's the guy who basically put his ass in jail. And then the most messed up thing of it all is they have the sheer audacity to then go and get married to each other. And this is definitely a marriage that seems to be on the rocks at this point in their relationship, because they just don't seem really connected. Maybe at one point they were, but I don't know if it's because Max came back. It seemed like they were a little bit on the rocks before he came back into the picture, even though it all happened pretty quickly. But we see Tom struts around with his grin on his face like he owns the world. He can't do anything wrong. He handles his stress by microdosing on his little tincture and hallucinates for fun. But as we saw in episode 3, seems like he's actively trying to make his marriage explode at the same time. So more to come with that. And that basically brings us to Anna, who's the far more complex character in this situation, if you ask me, because she is operating from a place of deep paranoid guilt, in my opinion. We see her smile all the time, but it's probably just muscle memory or something that she feels like she just has to do because she has to play up this role as the perfect wife, the good attorney. But we all know, because of her role, especially in this project, that she's obligated to look, happy. But she's doing all that while harboring probably one of the darkest secrets of them all, because she knows that she railroaded Max and threw him to the wolves, which is probably why she went so hard to try to get him his settlement money. Because in my opinion, that's probably a way for her to kind of placate to him, let's play nice. I know I fucked over you, but I got you some money. It's not the 4.2 million because our firm is going to take 40% of that, but you'll get about 1.5 million. You spent 17 years in prison, don't have a wife, you don't have a kid, and we see him hallucinating heavy about those people. So that'll probably be explored more as well, because he's telling people he's not seeing his family, but we see him seeing his family. But Javier Bardem's version of Max Cady is totally different from Robert De Niro's, because he's not this hyper-aggressive cigar smoking maniac. He's a little bit more calculated, in my opinion. He's kind of quiet and reserved, and he has that stillness to him, almost like an apex predator. I think the brilliance of his character comes in the ambiguity of it all, because is he actually innocent from killing his wife? I think this show is doing a really good job at making us ask that question. I also think it's making us ask the question if Anna really put a innocent guy behind bars and turned him into this monster that he seems to be. And let's not forget, when this mystery lady leaves this dog collar behind, we start to see the cracks in Max's armor a little bit too. He isn't this boogeyman character. He's probably this adult version of a broken child who spent his formative years being abused. And speaking of abuse, even though they're not necessarily being abused, let's not forget about the Bowden kids, because those are the two that are doing all the heavy lifting in the damage control department. Should I say damage control, or should I say the damage department? Because they're definitely taking all this damage from their parents. Like, let's take a look at Natalie. She's this overachiever who's crumbling internally under the weight of her parents, trying to be perfect, the perfect athlete, the perfect student. She's stupid enough to accept drugs from a total stranger and have a makeout session with this girl named Amber, who is actually Nevaeh, the exact same person who is digitally manipulating her brother Zach. And then speaking of Zach, he's this hollowed out version of a teenager who's practically asking to be radicalized by Max because he feels alienated by his own damn parents. So in my opinion, the entire Bowden family is just this rotten house, and they're waiting for somebody, probably Max, to strike a match and just burn the damn thing down. And with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the visual storytelling and the breadcrumbs that were left in the first 3 episodes, because they are honestly begging to be decoded. Because I don't think the way to look at this is to look at what happened, at least not all of it. I think the way to truly look at this is to see where this thing is going. Now let's talk about this mass stalker, because that is probably one of the more interesting little side stories right now, because who is she? Is she some fangirl that's, chasing down a criminal? Because we saw another one pop up early in the episode and Max, had a funny conversation with her in the park. Or my prediction, this is probably Max's estranged stepsister. I don't even think this person is in this story to mess with the Bowdens. I think it's all about Max. This is probably some of his karma or whatever's going to come back to him from his childhood. And the reason I say that is because, her leaving what she left triggered his childhood. It didn't trigger any adult memories or anything like that. So I think this is probably somebody connected to his childhood. So my bet is his stepsister. And before we get off the whole Max train, let's talk about the glitching cameras in the Bowden house, because I don't think those cameras are glitching for no reason. They could be, but they seem to be missing pieces of footage every time they take a look at them. So what I really think is going on there is things are probably being taken out of the footage that they're seeing, bits and pieces that way they don't see the whole picture to something. But I would not be telling the truth if I didn't think that Max could be spying on them too. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure if he's this techie guy. I've heard hints of him being a chef or something like that. So I'm not sure how he's doing it. He didn't have any money up until recently. So I'm not sure if he has a buddy, has a friend that, does this. The whole Nevaeh connection is kind of interesting because I really don't think she has anything to do with him. And I'll touch on that in a second. But I just have this feeling that Max somehow is watching them too. Somebody's definitely watching them. Maybe it's not Max. Maybe there's a bigger story or a bigger enemy coming for everybody. But I just think that is Max probably keeping an eye on his, not competition, but the people that basically destroy his life. So this is probably going to come back to haunt them in some type of way, especially maybe Tom, since he is bold enough to, flirt and mess around with his coworker a little bit on his couch in his own house. And even his son kind of got a whiff of that. So that's not going to play out well for Tom, I don't think. And then going back to Nevaeh, also known as Amber, she has single-handedly infiltrated the two kids of this family. Like I said, she somehow managed to get Zach to cut off a toe, even if it was her that actually made him do it. Maybe it was Max, we don't really know. And then we see her at the party, love bombing Natalie with Molly and makeout sessions. But the reason I said earlier that I don't think she has any connection to Max is because when Anna showed her the picture of Max earlier in the season, she didn't really flinch at anything. She was like, "Nah, who the fuck is this old guy?" So I don't think she truly has a connection to Max, but I do think she has a connection to Tom. Tom is always gloating about how he locks people up, doing the good for the community. Tom likes to talk about how good he does. So I'm willing to bet, I shouldn't say willing to bet, but I think that maybe Nevaeh's parent or somebody close to her in her life probably was locked up by Tom, and she's doing all of this to basically fuck with his family and, tear him apart from the inside out for her own personal gain, or maybe it's just for her own personal fun. And the last thing I want to say is let's talk about this secret, because we know there's this dark secret. Something happened with Max, and the only people that know about it supposedly are Anna and Tom. We do know that Anna was pregnant with another man's baby because we heard Natalie talk about, Tom is her stepfather, not her actual father. And that made my spider senses tingle a little bit because it got me thinking about who the daddy could be. Like, trial aside, because the trial was probably all a sham anyways, but the most important thing here is probably the relationships between Max and Anna. And the reason I say that is because I wouldn't be surprised if Tom planted some fake evidence, or if Anna helped Tom plant some fake evidence to get Max put away. They obviously found some type of way to bury the truth while Max was locked up in a cage. But the real question here to me is, who is Natalie's daddy? Because I think it might be Max. Max seems to think that him and Anna were pretty tight back in the past. He has alluded to them, maybe been a little bit closer than what, somebody should be to their client. At least that's the way I took it. So I'm just going to say that Natalie is probably Max's child, and maybe that's why he wants to be around, because he lost one kid. So, maybe he wants to get to know the other one. But my prediction, by the end of this series, I doubt that Max murders his family. He probably just wants to torture them and tear them apart from the inside. But honestly, may all have to come together and help each other, because there seems to be some outside things happening that none of them have control over. And those things may actually bring in this crazy group of people that are interconnected by lies. It may actually bring them together, and they may have to try to handle other problems. That'll be really interesting. But last thing I'll say, Javier Bardem is delivering a masterclass in acting. Patrick Wilson is also doing a very, very good job as well. Amy Adams, I'm a little disappointed in that Southern accent. I'm not sure why she had to have it. I mean, she doesn't necessarily have to have an accent just because she lives in Georgia, in Savannah area. I mean, she just doesn't have to, because I think that kind of drags down some of her character a little bit, because I get caught up in the accent sometime and not everything she says feels genuine. So that's just my complaint. You guys let me know what you think about that. Outside of that, the pacing I think is pretty decent. It could be a little bit better, but I understand, they're expanding the world of the movie and they're not even really using all of that. They're kind of doing their own thing. So, it's 10 hours. So they have to, fill in the blanks and give us some extra story. And I don't really have a problem with it because I think it's a really good mystery and I'm truly confused on where the hell it's going. I'll just say, beautifully shot, viciously dark, 8 out of 10 for me right now. Could go higher, could go lower, but we're going to start at 8 out of 10 for this first review of Cape Fear. But now I want to turn it over to you guys. You guys let me know. Have you guys watched this show? Have you had the chance to check it out on Apple TV? I think it's actually worth the watch. It's a really good show so far. It has a very intriguing mystery and storyline. And I'm honestly curious what you guys think about it. Do you think Max spent the last 17 years meticulously calculating every single way that he could fuck with this family? Or is all of this just a big coincidence and it just happens to be happening at the same time? Let me know what you guys think about that. Also, I want to say thank you all for helping us grow this community to over 1,000 subscribers. Let's keep going, pushing for our next goal, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. Let's keep it going. Let's grow this community to as big as we wanted it to be. I appreciate you all. I love coming to you. And with all that being said, I will see you in the next video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe on your way out. And with that being said, I will see you in the next one.